Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning we're going to talk about the 5 senses. So let's jump right into it. So when looking at a theme on lifestyle, you really can't avoid the topic of knowing what your environment is now and what you want it to be. And so one of the aspects that's easiest to look at comes down to the 5 senses. Now, looking at those 5 senses, it gives you an idea of how to envision your future, how to look at it from a standpoint of what you actually see in the future, what you actually can envision, what you can experience, what you can look forward to, and really looking at how you need to set up your environment today to set you up for success for tomorrow. So you may be thinking about the 5 senses. You may have heard of the 5 senses, but not know exactly how that ties into building margin. And so looking at margin, when you're building margin into life, you're building margin in for a purpose. And the purpose of that is to build it in so that you are living a lifestyle that you want to live in. So if you're not living that today, it's a matter of building out the goals in order to get there. And so the purpose in that is to build out a vision that you're looking toward so that you know if you're on the right track today or not, if you need to make adjustments today or not. And so when you're looking at this, I found a resource that I read through. It was a short book called Vivid Vision. And Vivid Vision actually goes through SMART goals, which you've probably heard of and I've brought up before. But looking at SMART goals have to do with what would be a goal that is specific, that's measurable, that's achievable, that's results oriented or results focused, and it has a time associated to it, and figuring out how those SMART goals can be built out so that you can figure out what needs to change in your environment today, what needs to change in your world today in order to make sure that you're on the right trajectory for the vision that you have for your life, and resulting in the legacy that then you leave behind for future generations. So you may be like me in the sense that you know the goals that you have, you've written down those goals, you know how to charge at those goals and pursue those goals, but you may not have sat down to actually build a narrative around what your lifestyle, what your world will look like in the future based on those goals. And so the purpose of this is to look at the 5 senses to figure out, okay, where am I going from a vision standpoint? And therefore, how do I back that out based on my environment today and what needs to change in order to get there? So you may have never really thought about your environment. You may not think about the fact that you are sitting in your office or in your studio. You may not be thinking about the fact that you're sitting on your couch or that you are boarding a plane somewhere, and you may not really think about your environment and how your environment affects you. But the important part is to actually be thinking through this from a standpoint of whether your environment actually inspires what you are wanting in the future and actually fits that rhetoric, or whether you are just kind of going day by day and not actually being intentional about what surrounds you. And so it's important to look at this from a standpoint of making sure that you know what you want, and maybe even more importantly, what you don't want, so that you can clearly make decisions based on the things you may need to make decisions on, and whether those actually align with your vision or not. So whether you like it or not, the environment that you have around you is almost like a lens that you filter the world from. And so when you're looking at the world, you have to be careful about the lens that you have, that you may be viewing the world as scary or more scary than it is because of perceived risk. You may be seeing aspects of your future that are maybe unattainable because of your surroundings, and you may be seeing things through a lens that's just not accurate because of the environment that you have allowed around you, rather than being intentional about the surroundings that you have. So our environment is our habitat. It is not only what we do for a living, the people we surround ourselves with, the community that we may or may not be involved in, it has to do with all the components of your habitat. So it's not singularly focused, it's everything that's influencing you, whether you realize it or not. So the five senses are sight, hearing, smell, touch, taste. And looking at those five senses, that's how you want to build out your vision. That's how you want to look at your world that you ideally want to create around you. You want to look at it from a standpoint of envisioning what you want based on building a rhetoric around what it would be like to be there, what it would smell like, you would see, and being able to look at your environment based on adding those senses in so that you have more of a all-encompassing or immersive vision for your life. So if you're a little bit confused on the sensory or intuitive components, you may want to consider going to 16personalities.com. It's a free test to go through the MBTI, to go through your Myers-Briggs letters. And the second letter in has to do with how you view life. And that's what we're talking about today, is looking at whether you view life from a sensory component where you're looking at the details, and therefore you may grow and improve by being able to build out that vision and figuring out how those sensory details and components fit into the long-term vision that you have, or that you are a visionary that then you need to look at how those details, the aspects that you need to build that vision back in toward need to look like, and how they need to look. And so you'll want to look at those components in order to better understand, okay, what am I actually aiming at when it comes to my environment, when it comes to how I want to live out life. And so one is not better than the other. It's just a matter of how people view their world, view life. And so when you're looking at people viewing life from different angles or different perspectives, based on how they're wired, people are going to view them from these different angles, but that's why we can learn from each other and grow from each other. So if you've taken this test, you'll have an idea of what your tendency is. Now, just so you know, the majority of the population is more sensory focused than intuitive. And so the majority, it's about 3/4 of the population, is more focused on the here and now, the details of life, focused on the next step, and focusing on what needs to be done today, what check boxes I can check off today. And so focusing in on that component can be helpful in really defining where you want to go. But it may be a little bit harder to build out that vision because you are so focused on what's relatively close within your sphere. Whereas for someone who's more intuitive, they may have a harder time coming down to the details of like what they actually want their future to look like. And so therefore they're going to have to build out what their present world looks like in order to build in those five senses for those future goals. So understanding this in the scope of building margin into your life is important so that you know what goals you need to build out, and therefore what, from a personal finance aspect or perspective, needs to be aligned in order to accomplish those things. And so that's why this is so important to look at when you're building out your vision, building out those goals, to know not only where you want to go and what you want to see your world look like, but then also what the financial impact of those decisions will be and what you need to prepare for today in order to hit that. So my call to action today comes down to looking first and foremost at whether you look at life through a lens of what is as a sensor or what could be as an intuitive. And then from there, you'll be able to build out what your ideal environment looks like and how to then build out your financial goals in order to accomplish that. If this information is helpful to you, please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're reminded to come back on a daily basis and improve in managing your personal finances. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow.